Greed is one of the oldest, most deeply rooted traits in human nature. It's a force that has shaped civilizations, toppled empires, driven innovation, and sparked conflict. To understand greed, we have to look at the essence of what it means to be human, a being of desire, constantly searching for more, never fully satisfied with what is already in hand. Greed is not just about wanting money or wealth, it's about wanting power, recognition, control, or comfort beyond what we truly need. The roots of greed stretch back to survival itself. In the earliest days of human existence, survival was not guaranteed. Food was scarce, shelter fragile, and life dangerous. A family that gathered more food than it needed had a better chance of making it through the winter. A hunter who claimed more territory could feed more children. In this way, the impulse to gather more than enough was rewarded by nature itself. Greed, in its most primitive form, was simply survival instinct magnified. But, as societies evolved and survival became easier, this instinct didn't go away, it grew. Instead of hunting more food than necessary, humans began to hoard land, gold, and influence. What once was protection became an addiction. At its core, greed is fueled by fear. Fear of loss, fear of falling behind, fear of being seen as weak or insignificant. Even the richest person in the world may still feel a gnawing emptiness, believing someone else could surpass them. This is why greed is endless. No matter how much is acquired, it never feels like enough. The mind tricks itself into believing that the next acquisition, the next deal, the next conquest will finally bring peace. But peace never arrives. Instead, the cycle repeats endlessly, because greed is not about having, it's about chasing. Psychologically, greed often emerges from comparison. Humans measure themselves not in isolation, but against others. If one person has a nice home, they feel satisfied until they see a neighbor with a bigger one. If one earns a promotion, they feel accomplished until someone else earns more. This constant comparison ignites envy, which feeds greed. We want more not because we need it, but because others have it, and in the silent competition of life, being second feels like failure. Greed also ties deeply to the illusion of security. People imagine that having more wealth, more possessions, or more status will shield them from harm. The irony, however, is that the pursuit of excess often creates its own dangers: stress, betrayal, corruption, and even physical harm. Yet, the human brain clings to the belief that the next step up will finally deliver safety. It is an illusion, but a powerful one. The more we get, the more fragile we feel, as if everything could slip away in an instant. And so, greed grows out of both abundance and insecurity at the same time. There is also a cultural dimension to greed. Modern society often glorifies those who accumulate vast fortunes, presenting them as models of success. Advertisements tell us we need the latest gadgets, the bigger car, the larger home, and the most luxurious lifestyle. Social media amplifies this by showing highlight reels of other people's wealth, vacations, and possessions, subtly planting the idea that we are lacking. This external pressure pushes people into cycles of endless wanting, even when their needs are already met. Greed, in this sense, is no longer just natural instinct, is manufactured and sold as a way of life. But greed is not only about individuals, it is also collective. Entire organizations, governments, and societies can become greedy. When a corporation chases profits at the expense of workers or the environment, it is institutional greed. When a nation expands endlessly for land, resources, or dominance, it is collective greed. These larger forms of greed can shape history, leading to wars, exploitation, and even collapse of civilizations. And yet, they always start with the same seed: the human desire for more. Ironically, greed is often mistaken for ambition. Ambition is about striving for growth, excellence, or achievement, while greed is about taking more than necessary, often at the cost of others. The line between the two can be very thin. Many people who begin with noble goals can slip into greed without even realizing it. A business person may start with the dream of creating something valuable. But as success comes, the hunger for more profits begins to overshadow the original vision. Slowly, the mission changes from service to self-interest. This shift reveals how easily ambition can decay into greed. The human mind is also wired to reward greed in subtle ways. When we acquire something new, dopamine floods the brain, giving a rush of pleasure. But like any drug, the effect fades quickly. The brain then craves another hit, pushing the person to chase more. This cycle of temporary highs creates a psychological trap. No matter how much is gained, the satisfaction never lasts. What begins as joy turns into addiction. This is why some of the wealthiest people in history, despite having unimaginable riches, continued to chase more until their final days. Another dimension of greed is its relationship to power. Wealth and possessions are not just objects, they represent control. When people are greedy, they often desire the influence that comes with abundance. Having more than others allows them to command respect, demand obedience, or manipulate outcomes. This thirst for dominance can be intoxicating because it elevates one's position in the social hierarchy. The more one has, the more one feels like a master over life itself. But this, too, is an illusion, because control built on greed is fragile. It can vanish overnight, leaving only emptiness behind. Greed can also be seen as a form of self-deception. People convince themselves that their actions are justified, that they are simply working hard, striving for success, or securing a future for their families. In truth, many of these rationalizations hide the fact that the desire for more has long surpassed necessity. This deception is what makes greed so dangerous. It can cloak itself in virtue. A leader may claim they are gathering wealth to benefit their people, but in reality, they are enriching themselves. An investor may claim they are working for financial freedom, but deep down, they are trapped in endless accumulation. The mask of respectability makes greed harder to confront. In some cases, greed is not about desire for material things at all, but about filling an inner void. Some people turn to money or possessions as substitutes for love, meaning, or satiate. When they feel empty inside, they try to fill the gap with external acquisitions. But no amount of wealth can cure loneliness, no amount of power can create true intimacy, and no possession can replace a sense of purpose. This is why greed can feel endless. It is not trying to satisfy a need of the body, but a hunger of the soul. And yet, despite its destructive potential, greed is also strangely creative. The pursuit of more has driven people to build cities, invent technology, and push the boundaries of science and art. The same hunger that causes corruption can also spark progress. This paradox makes greed one of the most complicated aspects of human behavior. It is both poison and fuel, curse and gift, depending on how it is channeled. Humans get greedy not just because they want more, but because they are creatures of limitless imagination, always reaching beyond the horizon. The danger lies in forgetting when enough is enough. Greed does not exist in a vacuum. It is shaped and reinforced by society. Modern culture often glorifies wealth and excess, presenting those who accumulate vast fortunes as models of success and achievement. Movies, television, advertisements, and social media feed the idea that happiness, status, and respect are measured by possessions and power. As a result, people are conditioned from a young age to equate more with better, to assume that accumulating beyond necessity is admirable and desirable. This cultural reinforcement amplifies natural greed, making it not only a personal tendency, but also a social expectation. People internalize these values, and over time, greed becomes normalized and even celebrated. Humans also get greedy because of the illusion of security. Wealth, status, and possessions create a false sense of protection, a belief that having more will shield them from life's uncertainties. People imagine that accumulating money, property, or influence will safeguard them from illness, accidents, or misfortune. The irony is that the more people chase security through accumulation, the more fragile they feel. Each gain triggers anxiety. Fear that it can be taken away. Fear that someone else may surpass them. Fear that it is never enough. This insecurity, paradoxically, drives people to amass even more, further fueling the cycle of greed. Greed is also closely tied to self-identity. Many people define themselves by what they own, what they have achieved, or the status they hold in society. Wealth and possessions are more than material. They are symbols of success, power, and self-worth. When a person ties their identity to accumulation, letting go or being content becomes psychologically difficult. The ego becomes dependent on growth and excess, and any reduction in wealth or influence feels like a personal failure. In this way, greed is not just a craving for resources, it is a craving to sustain one's sense of self. Losing what has been accumulated threatens not only comfort, but also identity, making greed an almost inescapable force. Another reason humans get greedy is that greed can act as a substitute for other unmet needs, emotional voids, such as loneliness, lack of purpose, or insecurity, often drive people to seek external solutions. Wealth and possessions become a way to fill gaps that cannot be satisfied through money alone. Luxury, power, and status provide temporary relief, a fleeting sense of control or fulfillment, but these are illusions. Because the inner void remains, the cycle of desire never ends. Greed, in this context, is a coping mechanism, an attempt to replace what is missing inside with what exists outside. It is a symptom of deeper human struggles, magnified by the materialistic lens through which society views success. The paradox of greed is that, while it can drive destructive behavior, it is also a source of creativity and progress. Many of humanity's greatest achievements have been fueled by the desire for more wealth, more knowledge, more influence, more understanding. Civilizations have built empires, explorers have discovered new lands, inventors have created groundbreaking technologies, and entrepreneurs have built thriving businesses, all motivated, at least in part, by the desire to attain more than what they currently had. In this way, greed is both a curse and a catalyst. It can lead to corruption, exploitation, and suffering, yet it can also inspire innovation, ingenuity, and transformation. At the same time, greed is insidious because it often disguises itself as ambition or necessity. Many people who begin their pursuit with noble intentions eventually slip into greed without realizing it. A business owner may start with the dream of providing value and serving customers, but as profits grow, the desire for ever-increasing revenue can overshadow original goals. Fear of scarcity further compounds the drive for greed. Even in times of abundance, humans are prone to imagining shortages. This psychological scarcity creates urgency and drives accumulation. Historically, societies have experienced cycles of overproduction, hoarding, and market collapses fueled by this combination. On an individual level, the fear of being left behind or missing out propels continuous striving for more, even when the current resources are sufficient. Greed is also amplified by social influence. Humans are social beings, constantly observing and mimicking those around them. When peers, family members, or colleagues display acquisitive behavior, it creates pressure to do the same. Competition, comparison, and envy feed off social dynamics. Even if a person is initially content, seeing others amass wealth, power, or status can trigger greed. This is why greed often spreads through communities or organizations, creating cycles where individuals push harder and further simply because they see others doing the same. Finally, greed can be understood as a reflection of the human desire to transcend limits. Humans are ambitious by nature, striving to push beyond boundaries. Greed takes this ambition and twists it into an insatiable craving for more. It is ambition unrestrained by moderation, patience, or ethical considerations. While ambition can drive meaningful achievement, greed focuses solely on accumulation, regardless of cost. The desire to acquire more becomes a defining feature of existence, a force that shapes choices, relationships, and the course of life itself. Greed also impacts relationships. Those who pursue excessive accumulation often prioritize wealth and possessions over human connection, empathy, and generosity. Friendships, family ties, and community bonds can weaken as individuals focus on their personal gain. Yet, the irony is that humans often seek connection and validation through accumulation, believing that more wealth or status will attract respect and admiration. Greed distorts priorities, creating a tension between what is truly meaningful relationships, trust, and fulfillment on the endless pursuit of more. In sum, humans get greedy for many interconnected reasons. Greed is rooted in survival instincts, psychological mechanisms, cultural reinforcement, social influence, and personal insecurity. It is fueled by fear, comparison, identity, and the illusion that wealth or power can bring lasting satisfaction. While greed can inspire progress, it can also lead to destructive consequences, both individually and collectively. It is a natural force, magnified by society, psychology, and circumstance, and it shapes the course of human history in profound ways.